In this lesson, we're going to have a look at a basic setup of AutoCAD before getting started with any actual drawing. Now, in front of us, we have a blank file that has just been opened, but I have AutoCAD set up already in a certain way. So I'm just going to run through some of the key points, key areas that you can click on to make sure that your setup is working in the way that you would like it to. So the first thing, just going from left to right, is have a look at the units format that you have currently. I have mine set up to decimal with a certain high precision, and I have it set to millimeters. So this can be to either centimeters, meters, inches, feet, whatever you are comfortable and used to working in. Just get that right before you get going so that all of your work, once you import it, is actually at the correct scale. The next thing to do is to have a look at some of your basic settings. Now, under Tools, go right to the bottom where you see Options. I'm off the screen for you because the menu is so long, but I've clicked on Options, and this basically gives you a basic setup to the whole of AutoCAD. Now, you can go through this tab by tab. I'm not going to go through it in detail at all, but I'm just going to show you where it is, how to get to it, and some of the major things that you can look at, for example, are any right-click customizations. If you are using a right-click to either redo a command or bring up a menu, you can basically set it up all in there. After that, you can have a look at the drafting setup so that you can have a look at your aperture sizes and your snap sizes. These are quite important. And then you can also have a look at your pick box sizes and basically what it looks like. You can have a look at visual effects settings as well. These are some things that I like to keep quite minimal, so I basically have just turned everything off, dashed it instead of having thick bold lines. And I like to have quite a simple setup to AutoCAD. I don't really want to see too many things in my workspace. I like to keep it quite neutral and clean, and this setup has just allowed me to do that. So I'm just going to leave the rest of that out. I do want to mention that in terms of toolbars, it is a good idea if you want to work quickly in AutoCAD is to get used to using as many shortcuts as possible. Now, I've provided a shortcuts sheet which just has a very, very small list of shortcuts. It's not very extensive, which makes it very easy to learn, and I find that these are some of the more basic ones that you really, or fundamental ones rather, that you really do want to get under your belt and using regularly. This has been pulled off from website online from Welkin, and you can just type into Google AutoCAD shortcuts and you'll get extensive lists all over the place. So get used to using those. The reason why you don't see many toolbars floating around on my screen is because I basically just try to use as few commands and as few shortcuts as possible. So that has really helped me to keep things flowing quickly. The toolbars that I do have are all related to layering and the lines that are on. They're not actually for creation or anything like that. If you do want to add toolbars, just go into an empty space, right click, and then you have a long list of your AutoCAD toolbars and a couple of express tools as well that are really useful. So some of the major ones that you might want to use further on, you can use this one, which is a standard toolbar. The whole list of, or everything that you can get within a toolbar is available through your menu at the top. So that is what I prefer to use, just so that, as once again, having a clean slate is quite preferable in AutoCAD. Down below, you have a couple of settings as well that apply to the entire program. The main one that you'll be using all the time is the object snap. It is F3, so you'll be basically, you can see snap on, snap off in my text over here. And the other one will be F8, which will basically make your work orthogonal or not. So if I'm in orthogonal mode, then any line I'm drawing is always going to be sticking to 90 degrees. So F8 and F3 are the two major ones, and everything else is more of an assistance really in terms of snapping or having polar tracking and all these other things that you can add to your style of workflow. So F3, F8 are the main ones. Besides that, the other major thing just to mention in case you don't already know is that the main difference between your model and your layout space. Basically everything that you will be drawing and creating will be within the model space, even though you're not necessarily making a model. It'll just be a 2D plan, but yet it's called model space. And then layout space is more like a paper space where you will lay out your presentation sheet. And this is something that we will cover much later in the course when we start to export our CAD work into Photoshop. So we will lay it out and then we will follow that at the end of the workflow. So once you have your unit set up, that is really the major one to not get any hiccups in terms of your scaling. Once you have that set up, you can also then have a look at your layers. So you can just click here on the layer property manager, and you can then start manually typing in any layers if you do have a method of creating them in. A couple of other things that I don't really set up, generally these are given by offices, so you can go and have a look at, where is it now? You can have a look at your text style and dimension style. Basically, your text style will be whatever your templates give you, but you can have an overriding text style that you can set up here that will apply to the whole drawing, so that before you create any text, get it right in your text style so that you don't have to manually go and edit it later on. Dimension style, it's pretty much the same thing. You can set up the way that the program will handle dimensions globally across your file. And this as well is something that is very often provided by offices. And equally so, we will get into this later on in the course, not really now, it's a bit too detailed, but you have a lot of line weights and a lot of other print settings that you can then apply. Once again, these are things that are given by offices, since people like to keep a certain standard of their work as they go through the production line between different people. So we will have a look at line weight and all of that a little bit later, but I just wanted to point out some of the main program setup features that you can get in place before doing any type of work at all. Great, so that pretty much concludes the initial chat on that. We're going to, in the next lesson, bring in our two plans, the sketches, the hand sketches that are pre-prepared for you, and we will then get started with that. So this one has just been a brief overview of the program, and the next one will actually involve some pictures for us to look at instead of this black void that you've been staring at. So thanks for listening, and we're going to jump right into the importing and drawing in the next lesson.